Yes.
All right, so let's start with roll call.
For the State Treasurer, Ms. Glasser-Hintrick. Ms. Higa. Ms. Dillon.
Here.
For the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Ms. Zubat. For the Director of Finance, Ms. Ortega. Chairperson Hendricks, you have a quorum. Thank you.
Excellent, thanks so much. All right, we have item number 1, which is our approval of the committee agenda. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Excellent. All right, and number 2 is approval of our minutes from our April 7th meeting. Hopefully we've had to take a look at those. I'd entertain a motion. Okay, it's been moved, seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, we have our minutes approved. So number 3, we have Tom Buffalo. Tom, welcome back. You've been working hard on behalf of the benefits and services. So we have item 3, which is our benefit adequacy for the pre-1999 retirees. This is an information item. We've slotted 75 minutes. We'll see how it goes. And I'm sure, Tom, you're okay with questions intermingled as per usual. Great, well, welcome.
Morning.
Good morning.
So before I get into the nuts and bolts of the research, I just want to tell a quick story about the origin of this project. So it actually began this time last year at the June board meeting. Ed Durman was here. He was presenting on the options for the Supplemental Benefits Maintenance Account, the SBMA. And after the item was presented and there was discussion from the board, members from the public came forward and had some comments. And they were telling stories about people that they knew, retired teachers, who were older, late in their 80s, single, and suggesting that they were having trouble covering their expenses. And so I believe it was actually Harry, he had asked, let's take a look at that population specifically. So we are going to look today at members who retired before 1999. Now this group has a slightly different benefit structure than members who retired 1999 and on, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But as we look at adequacy, we're going to be looking at it through the lens of income versus expenses. And I'm going to frame it in a way to show how the decisions that they made, members of this population, the decisions that they made when they retired, how that's shaping their current situation today. So we've done adequacy studies before 1998, 2004, 2008. They've all been done with a similar type of methodology known as a replacement ratio. So the defined benefit replacement ratio works like this. You take the amount that you get for your benefit as the numerator, for instance, over the denominator, which would be your final compensation. So how much of what you were getting paid while you were working is getting replaced by your defined benefit. So in 2008, they looked at replacement ratios for the 25th, 50th, 75th percentile. And they looked at specifically at members who retired in 2006, 2007. So it doesn't cover this population. And they actually followed a methodology similar to one that was done by Georgia State and Aon Consulting. They did a series of studies about replacement ratios over time. And typically or commonly cited where you get that, you need roughly 75 to 80% of your final compensation to have a quote-unquote adequate benefit in retirement. Previous studies done here at CalSTRS followed that methodology. Our previous studies also included assumptions about income from the defined benefit supplement account, assumptions about voluntary savings, so additional streams of income. And like I said, so the group that we're going to be looking at today doesn't have those additional things, and I'm going to be looking at it exclusively in terms of just the benefit compared to expenses. So that's what we're going to be looking at today. The members who retired before 1999, they did not receive things like the longevity bonus, the increased age factor. Beyond age 60, you can have up to 2.4% by the time you get to age 63. They also didn't have any DBS. So really all they have, for the most part, is just what the defined benefit. And when our previous studies were looking at replacement ratios, they were looking at one moment in time, that sort of starting point for retirement. So when I wanted to look at adequacy, I wanted to look at how these people are faring over time. So we're actually going to watch this group move over the last 17 years. And it will include all the components of their ongoing benefits, so their defined benefit, the purchasing power protection that they get from the SBMA, and then they also have, they did receive a few other benefit enhancements, changes, which we'll talk about in a second.
Can I just ask, do you have information, did any of them have like supplemental, like 403Bs or things like that, or did we have any of that information?
We do, and I'll cover that
Okay.
too a little bit. We get that information from our retirement readiness research, which happens every other year. And in fact, we're midstream on that right now. We're just getting the data back for it. And I'll come back to you in November with that information. But all of that is not assumed here. This is just looking purely at the benefit relative to expenses, because I wanted to see how it held up, so to speak. Okay, so I needed to go find a living expense. So I went to the Googles, and I found Dr. Amy Glassmeyer, professor of economic geography and regional planning at MIT. And she and her staff have gone through, and they've actually estimated a minimum living expense for every state and every county in the United States, which was convenient. Includes basic living expenses, food, housing, healthcare, transportation, taxes, those types of things. So for the sake of this study, and she has different demographic profiles. She can show you if you have 2 adults in the household, what their minimum expense would be, 2 adults, 2 children, 3 children, 1 adult working, both working, et cetera. So for the sake of this study, we're actually using the minimum living expense for 1 adult, because I go back to the comments from the public. They said that people that they knew, they were single, living alone, that type of thing. So again, I wanted to compare our benefit, or the benefit that the members are receiving, to this 1 adult living expense. So here's what it looks like. So along the bottom are the 58 counties in the state. And then the expense that she has estimated for each one of those. So on the far left, we have Tehama County, monthly living expense roughly around $1,700. And then all the way to the far right, you have Marin County, San Francisco, San Mateo County, the highest cost of living in the state, at a little over $2,500 a month. I know it's tiny, but what I wanted to really show is just the number that we're actually using is the California number as a whole, which is represented by that red diamond right there. And you can see California is kind of drifts a little to the right in terms of it's slightly on the higher end, if you will. So it provides a quote-unquote conservative threshold, or a little bit of a higher threshold in which these members would have to clear in order to be deemed adequate. And that number for 2016 is $2,240 per month. So again, we're using one number. This is just all of them across the state, but we're using one number for the sake of this study, which is the California number. Okay, so like I said, the members who retired before 1999 didn't receive the longevity bonus, career factor, increased age factors, but they did get some things. So in 2000, they received a minimum benefit guarantee, and that one works like this. It was based on how many years of service they had when they retired. If they had at least 20 years of credited service, their minimum guarantee, they received at least $15,000 per year, which equates to $1,250 per month. 21 years of service, $15,500 per year, all the way up to 30 years or more of credited service, in which case they got at least a minimum of $20,000 per year, which equates to $1,667 per month. So they got that based on their service credit. In 2001, they also received a one-time increase. And the one-time increase was based on when they retired. So if they retired, for instance, in 1997, they received a 1% increase. If they retired between 1995 and 1996, they got a 2% increase, and then it goes back in time up to a 6% increase if they retired before 1975. Also, they received 2 increases in the SBMA over this time, the Supplemental Benefits Maintenance Account, which again protects your purchasing power. So going into 1999 and beyond, it was set at 75%, which meant that if the original benefit fell below 75% of the original purchasing power of the benefit, we would provide a quarterly payment that would bring them at least up to that 75%. So in 2001, that threshold was increased to 80%, and then in 2008, it went from 80% to 85%, which is where it is today. So I wanted to mention these because they did receive a few things, but also we're actually going to see these kind of come to life as we watch this group move over time. Okay, so we're going to be looking at members retired before 99 in California, and we're looking at all members. And what I mean by that is there's sort of 2 categories. We have members who opted to receive, elect an option beneficiary, so they voluntarily reduced the amount that they got at the onset because they said, give me a little bit less so that I can give some to, an option beneficiary so that they can have a benefit for the remainder of their life. So we have that group of members. Then we also have members who receive just what we call the member-only benefit. So they took the maximum that was available to them without any assumption that there would be any more paid out beyond their death. So we're going to look at all of them together. Okay, so I know there's a lot here, but let me explain what we're going to be looking at because we're going to be looking at a series of these graphs over time. So the first thing, along the horizontal axis, we have monthly benefit amounts. So these are separated into $100 increments, and they go up from 0 up to 7,000 in this case. That's along our horizontal axis. On our vertical axis, we have the number of these retirees. So from 0 to 6,500, for instance. And really what it means is that we have a count of all the members that are receiving between, for instance, between 1,000 and 1,100 per month. So it's a basic distribution of the monthly benefit. Now I've also added to that for reference what's called the normal curve, more commonly known as the bell curve. So I added this because I wanted to show if the data were distributed evenly, and symmetrically, it would actually look like this, okay? Now, the height of the curve is based on a couple of things. First, this tallest blue line, this is actually the average of the distribution. So every time we see this tall blue line in the succeeding graphs, it's pointing to the average, for instance, benefit of this group in this year. So for instance, in 1999, everybody who retired before 1999 had an average benefit of roughly $18.25 per month. Okay, we're also going to see one standard deviation out, and if you kind of know statistics, you know that roughly 68% of your population sits between within one standard deviation of your average, and we'll also see 2 standard deviations. Okay, so it provides the shape of the curve. I'll go slow. I'll go slow. I know it's maybe bringing up bad memories for some, but I'll try to go slow. Okay, so then we've also got. This is the minimum living expense line. So this is Dr. Glassmeyer's estimate. And I plotted this here because I wanted to see, you can actually visually see who's above it and who's below it and how many.
Is that average for California, the green line?
Yeah, the green line is the California number. Okay. The height of these lines, and then I've also got poverty. We're not going to talk about the poverty line, but I did want to put it for reference sake so that we can see that the minimum living expense line is not poverty. Okay, it's an expense line that's estimated a very modest standard of living, has to do with making meals at home, not necessarily going out a whole lot, just a very basic, modest standard of living. But it's not poverty because the minimum living expense line over this time has been at least 2 times the poverty line. But it's there just for reference. And the height of these lines don't really matter. It's really just, again, they're pointing to their point on the horizontal axis. Okay, so then also we have here an ongoing count. So in 1999, there were 108,000 of these retirees. Above the line, 62%, 67,000, and below the line, 41,000, 38%. And then finally along the bottom, we're going to keep a running total of those below the line. Okay, so I'm going to pause for a second. Is everybody good with what we're looking at? Because like I said, we're going to watch this group move over time. So I want to make sure we're all clear. If nothing else, just kind of focus on that average line and then also in that blue box on the bottom, the percent below the line. Okay, so we're going to move from 1999 and we're going to go into 2000, and right away we're going to notice a change in the, a huge change in the distribution. Do you guys catch that? Go back to so here we have it, looks fairly symmetrically distributed. So this is actually the minimum guarantee in effect right here. We see people jumping from the 1,000 to 1,200 a month. They're jumping into the higher income buckets. So we're actually seeing the minimum guarantee come to life here because people have moved up. And then also you can see that it went from 38% below the line to 36% below the line because of that minimum guarantee.
I noticed that the total number of retirees changed, and that's because they are no more?
Yes.
Okay.
So this is a finite population. It will be shrinking over time. So
Right.
we're going to see that the graph is going to be moving to the right because people's incomes are going to be increasing because of purchasing power protection and the annual benefit adjustment that they get, the 2%. But then it's also going to be shrinking over time because, you know, members are passing away.
And then just to clarify, the below the line is to the green line to the left?
Yes, correct.
Dana?
So what year, when this jump up has happened, what year did those people retire?
These are, all of these people in this population retired before 1999. So this is.
No, I
everybody.
understand that, but by the time that the minimum guarantee hits, do we have an estimate of what year that? Oh, and Tom, I'm sorry. We used to be able to tell when that might kick in for someone, what year they retired, it might, the
Oh, you're
guarantee
thinking of
would
the
kick in?
SBMA. The
Yeah,
SBMA.
yeah,
Yeah, the
yeah,
SBMA. Yes, exactly.
But you're not talking about SBMA?
No,
kicking
this
in
is the
here?
minimum guarantee. This is the effect of the minimum guarantee.
Okay,
This is
okay.
what happened here, okay?
Then when you get to the SBMA, you can answer the question.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, it's
Never
up
mind.
till about 92, 93,
Got
within
it,
that
got it.
range. Those are the people that are receiving the SBMA now. Okay, so this is the effect of the minimum guarantee. So I'm going to move forward again to 2001. And again, we notice a slight change in the shape of the distribution. This is the ad hoc increase taking effect, okay? So again, people are moving up in their income because of these policy changes. And we can see it with those below the line. It went from 38 to 36, now down to 35%, okay? Now we're going to see another change. This is from the SBMA going from 75% up to 80%.
Tom, Dana's got a question.
Oh, yes, sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
So did these increases not help these people on the far left?
On the far left, not necessarily, but it did pull some people above the line, right? Because our percentage below the line went down.
And the people on the far left possibly would not have longevity within the system, or is there anything that we can take away from those numbers on the far left still being so low?
Yeah, and I'm going to explain more about that as we go. We're going to see,
Okay.
like I said, everything's going to be framed in terms of the decisions that they made around their retirement age, how long they worked, those types of things, how that's shaping what their situation looks like today. Okay. So we're at 33% because of the first move, the increase of the SBMA back in 2001, 2002, from 75% to 80%. We're at 33% below the line. Now we're going to watch the curve, again, continue to move, and it's not going to change much shape because nothing has really changed between now and the next movement of the SBMA. Again, it's just going to be shrinking because this population is finite and the members are passing away as time goes on. So we're kind of stabilizing here at 33%, 34% below the line. 35, it's ticking up just a little bit. I don't know where I need to point this thing to get it to. Okay, so we're at 35%, and so watch what happens to the curve when the SBMA goes from 80% to 85%. We're going to be just going to see a shift. There it goes. So we went from 35% down to 30% because of the increase of the SBMA from 80% to 85%. So again, just some of these policy changes coming to life here. And then that's kind of where we've been. It's stabilized for the most part because inflation has been low. There hasn't been many changes. And so here's where we are today with 32% below the line. Okay. So pause for a second, because like I said, this includes everybody. This includes members who took an option beneficiary. So again, they voluntarily elected to reduce their benefit at that time, right? Give me a little bit less so that my option beneficiary can get some for the rest of their life. So I want you to remember two numbers before we move on. Remember 1999, 38%, that was our starting point. 2016, 32%, our end point, where we are today. Now I thought, let's remove those people who voluntarily reduce their benefit at the onset. And I thought the line would move up and that we'd get a lot more people over the line versus below the line. So remember, 38%, 32%. And now we're going to look at just people who receive the member-only benefit, okay, in California. And something very interesting happens. So the number below the line actually goes up, right? We started at 38%. Here, with just those who receive the member-only benefit, we're actually at 44% below the line. So I was talking to Rick and David about this, and as it turns out, when you have a little bit more money, you're a little more ready to give it, so to speak, to an option beneficiary. So the people that elected the member-only benefit, it seems here that they really needed all of it, right? They needed to keep all of it, so to speak. And there could be other circumstances around it. But it's just interesting because, like I said, I thought the number, once we remove the people who voluntarily reduce their benefit, I thought we'd see improvement, but actually we see more people below the line. And I'll just fast forward to today. So we're actually currently, if we're looking at just the member-only benefit, and if this is all that they have, so no outside savings, again, I'm not assuming any sort of additional income in this study. If this is all they have, 36% sit below the line. They receive a benefit that's below the line in California. Okay, so let's dig in a little more about where this is all coming from. Before we do that, though, here is just all 18 years in one. Along the bottom, we have the monthly benefit amount again. We have along our horizontal axis, 1999 up until 2016. This is actually broken into quartiles. So the way to read this is you can see the yellow and the blue. That basically represents 50% of the population, right? That line where the yellow meets the blue is actually your median. So you've got your 25th and then your 50th percentile, or your 50th and your 75th percentile sort of here together, okay? So we can see today, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to understand, so what you're saying is that the average member-only benefit is actually lower than the benefit for people who have taken the option for?
Not necessarily. What this is suggesting is that the member-only benefit, when people elected it, they pretty much needed all of it, I guess you could say, right? So I guess you could say it might be on average a little low. It starts higher, right? The member-only benefit is the highest amount that you can get. But those that elected to get it are receiving a lower amount relative to those who received who took an option.
But the minimum living expense line is the same for both.
Yes, exactly,
groups.
yeah.
So if we started at, I think it was 38% below the line for those who took the option.
For everybody, yeah, for the whole population.
Well, that was for everybody.
That was for everybody, so
Okay,
including these people
38%.
plus people that took the option,
Okay.
the whole population.
It was 38%, but 44% of the people who were below, who were getting the member-only benefit were below the line.
Correct, yeah.
Then we have to assume that the member-only benefit was lower than the average benefit.
On the aggregate, yes. Yeah.
Okay, so it was a function, so, okay, so it's a function not of, the choice was dictated in large part by, as you said, by the need.
Yes,
Perceived need for more.
correct,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
For option A.
Yeah,
And the number of people in this category is relatively small to the total, right? The total retirees on the previous slide was about 100,000.
yeah, but the group shrank over time, so they were, I believe it was something like 60,000 total.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And it's roughly about half
Okay.
that are now with, let me just look that up really
So
quick.
it started out about 50-50?
It's about 60-40, those who take the member-only benefit versus those who take the option. So the total group Yeah, is roughly around 60,000, I think, today. 50,000 or so of those who retired before 99. Okay. Okay, so this one is this shows the full range of the benefit over time. And again, if you want to just focus on color, the yellow and the blue represent 50% of the population. And then where the yellow and the blue meet, that's the median, which is very, very close to the average. It's within about $50 of the average, which we saw on the other slides. So it just shows that, I mean, these haven't been sort of wild swings back and forth. This is just kind of a gradual increase of the benefit over time mostly because of the benefit adjustment and in some cases the supplemental benefits maintenance account coming in. Okay, so I wanted to dig in a little deeper and try to find what was driving what's going on, okay? So deeper statistical analysis, regression. So regression is used, it's a common statistical application, and it's used in forecasting, but it can also be used to look at relationships. So let me give you the quick 30-second primer on regression. So clear your mind for a second, and I want you to go back in time to when you first started learning algebra, okay? And you can do this. All right, here we go. So go back in time so I remember it was around 8th grade. And specifically, remember when you first learned how to graph equations, right? So I remember my math teacher, Mr. Williams, who gave us two things. He gave us the equation, and then he gave us a sheet of graph paper, right, with the blue lines. If any millennials are tuning in, they're probably like, what's graph paper? So let's say he gave you the equation. It was, what's that? So let's say that the equation he gave you was y equals 2x. So you look at it, you're like, all right, y equals 2x. If I plug in 1 for x, every time x goes up by 1, y goes up by 2. So take your graph paper, take your ruler, you draw the t. You start at 0, 0, and you're like, all right, y equals 2x. So I count 1 square over for x, 2 squares up for y. Draw a little dot. 1 square over for x, 2 up for y, draw a little dot. And then you can just keep doing that. Then you take your ruler, you draw your line, y equals 2x. So that is the essence of statistical regression. Okay, it's slightly more complicated than that, but what it allows you to do is see as x moves up, and in this case our x is going to be age, service credit, final compensation. As x moves up by 1, what is the effect on y? Okay, and I will say that 2 in the y equals 2x, that's known in the regression formula, that's known as the beta coefficient. It's kind of a fancy term. We can just call it, it's more commonly known as a beta weight, or we can just call it the weight of x. So what kind of weight on x, or the weight of x, how does that predict the outcome of y? So here's what I did. I regressed age, retirement age, service credit, and final compensation against the final benefit every year since 1999. So forget about the numbers for a second. Let's just look at the colors. So retirement age is red. Notice how it's sitting on top of everything else. It has the most weight. Service credit is not far behind. It's the blue line. And then final compensation. This is actually final compensation per $100. So an increase of $100. So if you put it all together, what this means is if you go all the way to 2016, what this means is if you were to pull a member of this population out, and if they could have gone back in time and, for instance, waited 1 more year to retire, it would have equated to roughly a little more than $125 more per month in their benefit. Or if they had waited and retired a year later, so they'd earn an additional year of service credit, right? X goes up by 1, that would have equated to a little more than $100 per month in their monthly benefit. And then as far as final compensation goes, if they were to earn, $100 more, it would have equated to, about $30 per month more. But what it allows us to do is see the relationship and see what is driving what's going on with them today, right? So it's clear the group as a whole, age and service credit had the biggest influence over what's happening for them today. Okay, so then I decided to split it and do the same exact thing for those who are above the line versus those who are below the line. So above the line looks like this, very similar. age is has the most weight, followed by service credit, followed by final compensation. So they follow that trend of the whole group on the aggregate. However, when you split to those below the line, we actually get a split, or a flip, I'm sorry, a flip basically where service credit now has the most weight, age is next, and then final compensation is next. So again, this just shows, we'll go into each one of these more specifically, but this just shows relationships, and it suggests that members below the line, that the driver for where they are today is potentially service credit, more or less. Okay, so let's take a look at age for this group. Again, going forward, we're looking at just those who elected the member-only benefit, and we're looking at age at retirement. And so when I graphed it in 1999, I mean, the thing that stood out that's most fascinating to me is this is how plan design influences behavior, right? We can see our two pillars are at age 55 and age 60. Age 55, in most cases, was the earliest that they could retire, whereas age 60 was the age that they could maximize their age factor, right? They topped out at 2% at age 60, this group. Okay, so it's just fascinating to me that we can see human behavior here just in the way that we've designed the plan, right? And then their average age of retirement, like I said, that tall blue line points to a little bit over 60. So this is the group as a whole, and we're just going to watch them move over time. We see two things happening. We see the population is going down because members are passing away, and then also, not surprisingly, the average age at retirement is going down too, right? Because older members are passing away, or members who retired at an older age are passing away. So those who are younger, who are still around, are influencing that average, and it's pulling it lower. Now take a look at what our two pillars at age 55 and age 60. We have both at about 5,000. So 5,000 of the 28,000, roughly 10,000 of the 28,000 retired at either age 55 or age 60. So when you split this into those below the line versus those above the line, which I'm going to do next, it is those below the line will be red, those above the line will be green. You can see how they are distributed. Right? You can see that those, and I'll break them out like this too. You can see the same exact information, just split. So you can see those below the line, their tendency, a much greater tendency to retire earlier. Right? We had about 5,000 who retired at 55, and then another 5,000 who retired at 60. Those below the line, 3,000 of those, 3/5 of them retired at age 55. Whereas above the line, you can see them, more of them retired at age 60 and then above.
Dana?
So Tom, I know within your report, you had said that, speculated that the people that were below the line had possibly retired at that earlier age to go to work somewhere else.
Right.
Did you do any speculation that due to the age of some of the retirees and I don't know what the statistics are on marriage, but would they be the second wage earner in the family, which thus let them not teach as long because perhaps they raised a family, and then also being able to retire because they were the second wage earner?
Right.
Did you do any, is there any?
Yeah, well, I have a little bit for that later on. And then also, like I said, we grab more of that information from our retirement readiness assessment. Because again, this is looking exclusively at just the benefit, member-only benefit compared to an expense line. Right?
Yeah.
And hold that thought, because I do have some data for it that explains a different look at household income versus just the member-only benefit. Okay, so let's move on to service credit for this group. So here's where they were in 1999. The highest point is over, between 30 and 31 years. Now, something very interesting happens here too. So I want you to watch for it and tell me if you see it. So just watch where that average line meets in 1999. We're at about 24 and a half years of average service credit for this group. I'm just going to advance it quickly. Did you catch it? Did you see how the average service credit went up? So remember back in April when we talked about longevity, teachers living longer. So it's generally accepted that, teachers live longer than most. But what we're actually seeing here is that the longer you worked as a teacher, the longer you lived relative to other teachers, right? Because the average pulled up over time. That means those people who are still around
This is a little self-serving. So if I want to live a longer life, do I retire sooner or later?
Later.
Later. So if I'm done, I should retire sooner. If I want to go earlier.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to figure it out.
Yeah, that's it.
I just want to make sure I got it right.
Keep going, keep working.
Keep working if I
Yeah.
want to keep going.
Yeah,
Good.
so,
It's self-serving. I
Yeah.
admittedly, it's admittedly self-serving.
it's okay. It's all right. So, like I was saying, it's generally acknowledged that teachers live longer than most people. Oh, moving to the ref. Yeah. So we'll go back in time. Let's go back. Okay, so again, 24 and a half roughly average service credit of everyone who retired before 1999. And then again, this is reflecting members passing away, so the population is shrinking. And so as we get to today, the average has been pulled up. So that means more people who worked longer, in that over 25 has been pulling that average up. It means they're around still, right? They've endured.
I'm digressing, but I think that there's probably something that one could pull out of that. Is that you have meaning. You continue to have meaning in your life. You have some place to go. You're making a difference. I think there's probably be a good conversation to have over a cup of coffee sometime. No, I mean, seriously, I mean, it's because teachers go into teaching because they want to make a difference.
Yeah.
And, they still have meaning. And
They
you
do,
hear
and
it.
remember, look, I was pointing to my 8th grade algebra teacher. I still remember stuff he taught me today, and I'm telling it to you, so. Mr. Williams, he told me, he said, Tom, you stick with math, which I did, so I like it. All right, so, learn how to talk right, is what she told me. Okay. So now I'm going to split this group, again, like before, below the line, above the line. Below the line is going to be red, above the line is going to be green. Now here's where we see one of the most drastic differences, right? You can see that red group, the below the line, had drastically less service credit. And that goes back to the regression equation that I was referring to, how service credit for them weighed more heavily in their current outcome. And if we split it, we can see that those below the line averaged, about 16 years of service credit, whereas those above the line averaged 30. The above the line group, 98% of them worked at least 20 years or more. And then the group below the line, 75% of them actually worked less than 20 years. So we're seeing some very distinct differences between the two groups at this point. And again, it comes back to decisions they made at the point of their retirement. I know it's not always in their control, but the age when they retired, how long they worked in the career, these things are sort of flowing through to today. Okay, so I did also want to look at replacement ratio. So let me explain what I did. I didn't look at it as a point in time measure. I looked at it over time. So everyone who retired before 1998, I inflated their salary based on inflation to $1999, okay? And then I compare, so that was our denominator. The numerator was what they were receiving from CalSTRS. Okay, so it's an ongoing replacement ratio. So it's almost like they call it the counterfactual, where if in an alternate universe these teachers were still working and if they were earning what they were earning in this year, what are they getting from CalSTRS relative to that? Okay, so here we see the distribution of that, average slightly under 40% replacement ratio. So again, if they were still working in 1999, what are they getting from us relative to that? It's about 40%. We're going to see, actually, similar to what happened before, we're going to see this number tick up a little bit with the minimum guarantee, with the ad hoc, with the SBMA. We're going to see it pull back, and then we're going to see it come forward again. So it's going to tick up just a little bit. That was the minimum guarantee coming into play. It's going to tick up a little bit again, that's the ad hoc. And then again, from the SBMA going from 75 to 80. And we're going to watch it slowly pull back. Again, I'm just looking at the average. And then here's our biggest jump going from 80 to 85% SBMA. Pulls our replacement ratio up again. And then going forward, inflation's been relatively stable since then. And here's where we are today, right back around 40%. So again, if these teachers who are still who retired before 1999, if they were still working and earning what they were earning in their last year today versus what we're actually giving them, it's about 40% of that. on average, okay? Now, if we split it, we're going to see another contrast again, below the line, above the line. Okay, so replacement ratio is driven by service credit, and then your age factor, right? If you have 30 years of service and you have a 2% age factor, 30 times 2 is 60, you're replacing 60% of your salary. So if you look at the red, they're averaging roughly 25% replacement ratio. It's some combination of a lower service credit and or a lower age factor versus those on the right, the white, the green. They have a higher replacement ratio, and I'll split it out so you can see a little clearer, closer to 50%. Okay, because we've seen that they've worked longer, retired closer to 60, tried to maximize that age factor and the amount of service credit. So again, just different behavioral differences between the groups and where they are today. It's driven in large part by the decisions they made almost 20 years ago and beyond. Okay, so I also wanted to take a look at this is another smaller behavioral indication. So this is members who, when their benefits started more than a year after their last compensation date. And I wanted to look at this because the normal practice, I think, for most teachers is you finish your last day of school and then you start your retirement right away. So there's no gap, really, right? There's no gap. So a gap here suggests that they might have left the career altogether, right? Because there's a long gap between when they received their last bit of compensation and when they actually got their first benefit. So 2-year gap, which is, the highest point, something there, maybe they just waited an extra year to actually file their paperwork. But definitely as you start going into 10, 15, 20, these people, they left the career, right? And they most likely just waited until 55 when they could first get the benefit, and then they filed for their retirement benefit. So if we look at it, it's about 1,800 of this 28,000 member-only benefit, so 6%. So we'll use that 6% as our benchmark, so to speak. So if we look at those above the line, first of all, their average went down, so there's less of a gap there, but only 1% of that 6% actually had this gap. Whereas if we could look at those above the line or below the line, 5 of that 6%. So again, a disproportionate leaning toward those below the line. This is suggesting, it's smaller, it's a smaller indication, but it is suggesting that it's very possible that these members, left the career altogether, and they're receiving a benefit from us because they earned it, but it's lower because they went on and did something else. Okay, so Dana, this comes back to your question. Looking at just the benefit alone versus overall household income. So this is everything we've been looking at so far. We've got the blue curve, we've got the green line, the red line, the monthly benefit amount. Every other year in our retirement readiness, we ask our members, what is your household income? So yours plus a possible spouse, maybe not a spouse at all, but just your whole income. So the member-only benefit scenario looks like this, but if we base it on household income for members over 80, it may actually look more like this, based on what they've told us is their household income. So members in their late 70s, 80s, late 80s, they say that their average household income is about $81,000 a year. And if you just use the sort of statistical parameters of the normal curve, like I said, within one standard deviation, you've got 68% of your population. After you do all the math, basically, those below the line, based on a household income perspective, is about 10% versus 36% if you're just looking exclusively at the member-only benefit. So just food for thought. Like I said, the retirement readiness, I'll come back to you in November with some of that information, but we're trying to tease this out more and see, try to explore this issue more about household income and see what's really going on. And then finally, I wanted to take a look at, since we saw such, when we saw those SBMA increases take effect, I wanted to see what would happen if the SBMA was actually increased to 90%, above the 85%. So here's everything we've seen so far. Nothing new here. 2016, 36% based on the member-only benefit is below the green line. If the SBMA moved up to 90%, it would pull about 1,000 more people above the line, and roughly 33% would be below the line. So we gain sort of an extra 3% above the line. And that's just an estimate, just for perspective. So there we have it. So we see the difference between above the line, below the line, it does go back to decisions made at retirement about age. We saw members below the line tended to retire younger, definitely had less service credit. Members above the line, retired older, had more service credit, and that is adequacy. Thank you.
That last point, the slide about increasing the SBMA to 90%. So and you said it would bring about 1,000 people above the line,
Yes.
or below the line now, but that's measuring based on member-only benefit, not household income.
Correct, yeah, member-only benefit.
So when you were talking about the number of this population that's below the line based on household income, you said it's about 10%?
Right.
So do you have any sense of, and 10% is about 2,800 people now?
Yeah, about 3,000.
So about 3,000. So we have 3,000 people in this population who are below the line based on household income. Do you have any sense as to what an increase in the SBMA to 90% would, how many of that 3,000 would go above the line?
No, I didn't actually estimate that. Happy to do it if you want, but it's interesting because over time, the above the line, below the line kind of fluctuated right within that margin. So sometimes people were below the line in one year and then they got pulled back up and then back down. Certainly the people that are farthest left, which would still remain on that far left, the SBA is not going to pull them up, unlikely enough to pull them over the line because they're sitting so far to the left.
Thank you.
I'm glad to hear your math skills,
8th grade math got me here, yeah.
Thank you for asking for this information. It's really helpful to understand all of our members and, how the benefit structure impacts the retirement security for our members. So we really appreciate your time and effort in the
Thank you.
research. Thanks for sharing it with us. Great, thank you. That's the information item. So any other questions from committee for Tom?
I just wanted to thank
sure.
Tom myself. One thing you don't see is he actually periodically, as he built up this study for you, did briefings for the executive staff. So we gave him feedback throughout this time, over a course of 9 months to a year you've been working on this. So there's a lot of methodical buildup of all this work to make sure we were on the right page. We know how important this is to the membership. We've all heard, those of us that have been around this system know the tension that's existed around that benefit population, their concerns about benefit adequacy, so we wanted to get this right. So we didn't hire Stanford University to do this study.
Right.
Obviously, this is original research done by our staff. So I think it shows you just how much we can do here with the quality staff we have. And Tom, you just did a great job with this and presenting it.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you so much, Tom.
Fascinating.
Great, thank you. Andrew, item 4 is our executive officer report. Oh, I'm sorry, Paula. Let me go ahead and get Paula before we go.
Paula Rice, Paula teacher. I like this very much, and it's really important information, but there are some really important things that are not being included in this.
Hang on 1 second.
Go ahead, yeah,
Christina,
pull that
can you
off the
help her?
mic.
Maybe it's not turned on. I don't know if it's turned on.
I'm just too small. I'm used to
Small in
that.
stature, but
Can you
not
hear me
in.
now?
That's better.
Okay, so
make sure you talk
this
to-
study is not taking into concern the WEP GPO effect, because some part of that household could
Gotta
very
go
well
right
be.
to the mic, Paula, right to the mic. There you
Okay.
go.
Part of the household income, when the husband or the spouse dies, that Social Security can vanish, bringing them down much lower. That's one thing. The second thing that you need to look at is that the poverty rate of single women in this country, in this state especially, is very, very high. Now, I'm not saying it's us, okay, but it's high because you have to take the effect of inflation on them, and you have to realize that costs are different for seniors. Healthcare is a big thing, And we do not, most of us, many, over 60%, the last I knew, do not have health care, past 65. I mean, you might get the Medicare, but the premiums are really high. And they're not stable. So healthcare is a biggie, and it should be looked at when you look at the life of the retirees. And the other thing, I'll just use this as myself because I'm a perfect example of how to do it right. Now, I retired after 35 years, but I was 59. And I do have a spouse with a pension who supplies the health care for me. So I'm relatively comfortable. But I know that there are so many others who aren't. And there are plenty of people in their 80s or 70s and 80s who are working because they can't afford to live. So I worked for 35 years. I took that, I had the longevity race. That was the key right there. I think you need to factor some of this other stuff and looking at the elder in cost of living, CCI-E, and there is legislation in Washington to get that in place. So I think it's just very complex. It's very complex. And I don't know how you fix it, but I hope you do try. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula, and thank you for your questions. And I agree with you that it's complex, and I think we can chat a little bit more about the comments you're making around how do we measure, the impact of the WEP and the GPO. I mean, can we do that? And then I think we talked, didn't we, Elisa? I think we chatted at the April meeting about talking about healthcare and the impact, right, for retirees. So I know that's something that we have discussed, Paula, so I really appreciate you. Now that Tom's so good at this, I think we're going to have
Job security.
Washington right now. And we looked at the group that is most in jeopardy is between, 50 and 65? And our teachers
absolutely.
are retiring at age 60 or 62. There's a blank space in there.
Sure.
Maybe some districts will pick it up, but maybe not. So I think we have to look at the skyrocketing and the issues around healthcare in this country.
Amen, sister. Thank you, Paula. If
I
you
may,
could just fix
just
healthcare in America too, on top of your research, Tom, that would be helpful.
Well, I wanted to make one comment about that because I did think about what Paula said when I was looking at that the minimum living expense. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, they produce a consumer expenditure survey where they survey thousands of people. I think they actually call them and they ask, how much do you spend on food? How much do you spend on this, that, and the other? Car maintenance and housing and all that sort of thing. So they're able to segregate that into those who are age 65 and older living in the West. So I sort of cross-validated what they actually spent against that minimum living expense line. And she's right that healthcare is, a bigger chunk of what they actually pay for. It assumes a larger overall proportion of their monthly budget. But interestingly, the bottom line, the amount that they actually spent was very, very close to that minimum living expense line on average. So there was a little bit of validation there, but I did want to consider that going into as a way to validate that somewhat that minimum living expense line. So it does in a way account for some of those extra expenses that they have to cover as they get older.
We can't measure the psychological impact of just the insecurity we have right now as a country, to Paula's point, politically and what's happening with healthcare. So that's definitely a challenge. Miss Loretta.
Loretta Tagenberger, UTLA retired. You take them from 1999, but there's a gap till the next when they get the increment. I retired in 99, and you were blank between 99, January 1, through June. We're not in on your report. I mean, you show us 1999.
It's pre-1999.
People get all the increments.
You do? Yeah. Okay. Let me pump you in.
Longevity, and we don't get that.
Right, yeah, so longevity wasn't included in this group. This group was following everybody like yourself who retired before 1999. Or did you say you retired in 1999?
99 June.
Oh, because then the
So
longevity didn't
we're
come in
kinda,
until a few years later.
Kind of not included in that.
I think what Loretta's referring to is that once some of those enhancements, from 99 to I think it was 2002, I think it was 2002 when some enhancements went into effect.
Right.
So there's this cohort in between 99
And the
and
money.
2002 that also might be impacted.
Right.
And I don't know if they're impacted, how much they're impacted as opposed to the 99.
Right.
But it's those that retired after 2002, they got the better bang for the buck from the system at that time.
Yeah.
So am I understanding you correctly, Loretta?
Yes, because they get the longevity, if they taught,
Right.
30, 32 years, the 400, 100, 200, 300,
Right.
400. And we didn't get any of that in 99 June. And they did, the ones after that, she's
Yeah.
right.
So that might be, if we, when we repeat this, perhaps we can add a side note with that cohort going forward
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
also, too.
absolutely.
All righty, thank you.
Loretta?
Yes.
Was that the Wayne Johnson amendment? The longevities?
It could have been.
Yeah, okay,
It could have been because that would have been right at the time.
Yeah.
Correct.
yeah, I think it was the Wayne Johnson amendments to longevity. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, yeah.
He was the president of CTA.
Oh, okay, I didn't know who that was. All right, Andrew.
Okay,
moving
thank
on.
you. So in terms of the report, what I wanted to cover was basically just we and me particularly spent a lot of time looking at the video from the last Benefits and Services Committee to make sure that I understood all of the direction that we received. And so for the July Benefits and Services Committee, in addition to presenting the Retirement Progress Report, I will also bring the customer service performance objectives that we have developed for the 17-18 fiscal year. And I also thought that it would be a good opportunity for us to look at the Benefits and Services Committee charter, because that charter has not been updated since 2009. And so I will include that in the materials for the July Benefits and Services Committee so that we can have a conversation about what makes sense to revise. Then the only other thing for the work plan, and that's going to be in the regular meeting, I think all of the direction that you gave has been reflected in that work plan. So
All the direction we gave. Sorry about that, Andrew. It's like,
very interesting. Thank you.
Joy and I are keeping you busy,
Yes,
so.
yes.
I think, go ahead.
That's all that I have.
I think we had a couple additions and Joy and I chatting, of course. But I think we'll leave that for the regular board meeting, right? Do we have a chance to give input there, or is it better to give input
I
here?
think capture it here, but mention it there, too.
Okay, did you want
Because then
to?
it's within.
Okay, so let me grab Karen first, and then Joy, maybe if you want to weigh in, so. Karen?
Hi. As in response to the April board meeting, there was some discussion about death benefits that were not being found to the right beneficiaries. So if you, and I'm not sure how to word this, but I'll just say it how I feel right now. So I would like to make a request that the undeclared death benefits somehow be, captured or the amounts, I guess, how many members are affected, how long they've been in this trust, and what methodologies have been used to find these beneficiaries. So I don't know what other words to use, but if you can get the gist of what I'm asking.
Those were great
We have
words.
an entire project around that issue,
Okay.
obviously. So-
I know that there has been, but it was only talked in terms of generalizations.
Right.
And just that there's a bunch of money, but I don't know what a bunch of
Right.
money is.
No, we have it all tracked, measured, we can do that for sure. I thought we had that on the work plan, didn't we? We do, yeah, we actually have that. When we get to the work plans this afternoon, that'll be actually discussed a bit.
Okay.
But just as a general comment, although we're not a life insurance company, this is
Right.
a issue for everybody that gives annuities out. It's a frustrating part to find the people.
Right, exactly.
But I do
But-
think it's important to get insight into kind of how are we
Yep.
trying to track folks
Right.
down and get that money, and then what happens with the money
Yep.
if we
Right.
don't, yeah, so, Good.
Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Yes, and just in response, Jack's absolutely right. There's a lot of internal conversation going on around, what the appropriate next steps are in terms of developing a more robust program to locate those beneficiaries for the unpaid death benefits. And then we're also going to bring a number of statistics and kind of information about what we're doing internally in that, I believe it's the May meeting for 2018.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. Thanks, Karen. Joy?
Yes, so Andrew, the additional item, or just maybe a topic that we wanted to make sure that we addressed as part of the work plan, comes out of the discussion we had yesterday in the ARM committee on the charter school audit.
Yes.
So we've already got an item on our work plan for February where we wanted to focus on employer audit findings and how we link some of the findings from those audits to outreach and education efforts to our employers. I think what we'd like to do is make sure that we specifically also capture the findings from the charter school audit and what kind of outreach we'll be doing with those charter schools. So
That makes
we wanted
sense.
to just make sure to call that out as part of that project.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
Yep, that's
We'll do
perfect,
that.
Joy. Yes. Okay, and Dana?
So Andrew, going back to what Karen was talking about, when you come back with your statistics, are you going to be giving us information on the causes of why people are not receiving these, like not having good addresses for beneficiaries, that type of thing?
Correct.
And possibly a strategy to mitigate that? Is that going to be part of it?
Correct.
All right, super, thank you.
And then I just had one last comment, and I don't know where it falls, and I did consult with Harvey about it, which is, I was reading the paper, I've been following this fiduciary rule movement or not, or to be or not to be, and it sounds like it's to be. And I know we don't want to overstep or, our scope of who we are as CalSTRS. I know we're not financial advisors, but I do wonder if it's possible for us to provide some kind of basic information to our members on our website, just giving them a heads up that I know a lot of the faculty I interact with just assume that anyone you talk to about financial, any financial advisor is a fiduciary. And I didn't really know what the word fiduciary meant until I got on this board. So I think for average members to understand that they're held to this fiduciary standard is significant. And as we try and raise the level of education for our members, I just wonder if there's a place for us to help with our members to educate them about this. Because I think this is really important. And I certainly hope it stays forever. But I guess I would leave it to staff to discern, how we stay in our lane and not overstep. But
Well, if I could,
Sure.
some of our workshops are about not just specific counselors' benefits, but how to be a good saver, how to create a good financial being. And I see that as an ingredient of that. They're not getting financial planning from us, but they do ask us, well, how do you find a financial planner? Well, part of that is getting the right financial planner. So I actually see it as part of our broad education for the membership and just giving good advice on that.
I know
for
we on
sure.
our website have, like blurbs, or you write a blog, Jack.
I do.
And so if there's something perhaps that could be more on the forefront of our website.
I agree.
On the member side, just to say, I think it's Friday that it's
Yep.
official. Just something like that. And then if we had something on the member side,
Yeah,
just kind of.
that's great. Yeah, it's not so easy to undo federal regulations.
I was gonna say, thank the Lord I just think it's such an important, it's so critical
Yeah.
for everyone to have skin in the game and to be held accountable. So so thank you.
Absolutely. We have a couple of member education items on the 17-18 work plan, and so we'll be sure to weave in sort of the things that we're doing along those lines.
Excellent. Thanks, Andrew. I've got Harry.
I think the single most effective thing that we could do for our membership is to drive them to pension 2. And to the extent that they can dollar cost average into those low cost passively managed index funds that they can select from if they're in the ability to start saving a little bit at a time. Once you get there, you realize I think the most challenging part is to educate people and then educate them to take action. Because once they take the education, the shift in thinking, get them into, and they can start putting $50, we know what the math is on it.
Yeah.
And those low-cost index funds that are in pension too, I think it's a broader topic for us in terms of long-term retirement security that may become more and more important for people. Tangible results.
I agree. We are strengthening and reinforcing those kinds of educational messages in our educational products and services. That financial awareness series that you've heard about, for example, talks specifically about the difference between index funds and mutual funds, active versus passive, so that we're providing members that kind of education.
403B compare, I can't stop talking about it. I can't
It's
stop.
great.
I'm like a little evangelist. I'm telling all my faculty about that website because, again, it provides really clear information about how the fees and how much that eats into potential retirement security. So, and as Tom's research has told, the earlier people start, whether that's, it's so critical. So thank you for all the work you're doing, and I'm glad that we're on top of this.
You're welcome.
Anything else? Let's see. Anything else for you,
That's it
Andrew?
for me.
Okay, and then information requests. Carolyn, did you capture those?
There may be a few.
Sure.
Well, the first one, I wasn't sure if this was an information request from Mr. Rosensteel, but he indicated he had interest in what number of retirees on agenda item 3 who are below the line based on household income would go over the line if the SBMA were increased to 90%. Okay, just one clarification. Also on agenda item 3, there was a question about looking at the impact of healthcare costs on retirees and also possibly looking into what about the people that retired between 1999 and June 2002. For agenda item 4, there was a question regarding unpaid death benefits. For example, how many members are affected? How long has this money been in this trust? What methods do we use to find beneficiaries? And what are some of the causes that are, causing us not to be able to find these beneficiaries and pay the death benefits? Also for agenda item 4, it sounds like I believe this was a request to add it to the February work plan. What type of training will charter schools receive based on audit findings in charter schools? And then finally,
it's for the work plan for the entire year, so staff can decide. I think the item that Joy referred to is the February 18 item. Whether charter schools fits in that February 18 item or it's before or after, just in the work plan at some point next year.
Okay, great.
It's fine.
And then finally, for agenda item 4, looking into education for members on general financial planning regarding CalSTRS benefits.
Yeah, and fiduciary rule. We can put that on there, just to be specific. Great, thanks, Carolyn. Well done. Okay, and we've, item 6 is our draft agenda for the next committee meeting. Andrew, take a look at, is that
Okay, so
Look
the
like-
draft agenda for the next meeting.
anything you want to highlight for us? I think you kind of mentioned a few
just
things.
went over the highlights at the beginning
Yep.
of the executive officer report, and so nothing other than what I've already covered.
Perfect. Great. Any additions, anything else? Excellent. I think,
I'll make an announcement if you leave your
okay,
mic on. Go ahead.
yes, I've got it on. So we'll go ahead and adjourn benefits and services. Madam Chair?
So the board is scheduled to meet at 12:30. I'm going to ask the board, what's your pleasure? We could start closed session during lunch. That would give us more opportunity to have discussion or in our open session, or maybe adjourn early. Are you guys okay doing that? Closed session at lunch?
Some of the travelers.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
closed session first.
All right, so Jack, what I think I'd like to do is we'll go ahead and do closed session during lunch in the caucus room.
I like
What
that.
type of time do you think? An hour? Hour and a half? The whole thing?
closed session.
Yeah, all of closed session,
And lunch.
at lunch. Well, we'll eat lunch, and,
We'll eat-
I mean,
we
some
can
of
have
it's
a
gonna be
working
done
lunch.
after we eat, I'm sure, but.
Yeah, the
can do
whole
a
thing.
working
I would
But we
think,
do, yeah, incorporate all that together, so
I would say
say,
an hour, you could maybe do that, possibly. It seems a little long, an hour and a half. But
so why don't we go 1 o'clock? Hour and 15?
yeah,
put the
that's great.
difference.
Yeah, let's do that. So for
All
the
right.
public, I mean.
To the public. We'll open here, hopefully at 1.
Yeah.
Y'all keep your fingers
We'll see you all
crossed.
back at 1 o'clock, and then Amy.